Hey there. I'm sitting in this car again. I apologize for that. I'm currently between houses right now, and I've almost sorted myself out. But I'm not quite there, so here we sit in this car, which is also not mine, looking at the wind in the grass, yeah? We already talked about bargain 1 and bargain 2. If you don't know what bargain 1 and bargain 2 are, you may go back and watch the other 2 videos. I'm going to read somebody's work on bargain 3, and that will be next video. But before I get there, I need to set up bargain 3, because it is similar to bargain 1, but it has its own little United States of America twist to it, okay? We were talking last time about bargain 2, and I was talking about the Constitution of the United States and how that was a bargain that we made with each other, that we wouldn't have any kings, we wouldn't have anybody ruling over us, that we the people are sovereign. We are sovereign over ourselves. We have body sovereignty, and we have liberty sovereignty, and we have happiness sovereignty. Yeah. And then in the 1860s, something came to the head with that bargain, and a whole bunch of people wanted out of it. They actually wanted to rewrite the bargain for themselves. They wanted to change it. And so before I go on, I'm going to ask you to think about this. Have you ever read the Constitution of the Confederate States of America? Because there was a constitution, and when they declared independence, the South seceded from our bargain that we had made because they didn't want it anymore. They set up another bargain, and we all went to fight about what is the bargain. So in order to have the conversation about bargain 3, I need to stop in the middle of the 1800s in the Civil War, and I want us to look at what it was exactly they were arguing about. The thing about history is when it gets written down, it can't be erased. It can be added to with more information, but you cannot delete anything from a written history unless you wipe out an entire culture, which has happened over thousands and thousands of years. See bargain 1. You can't really rewrite history, but you add to it, and people interpret it as time goes on. History is a very malleable thing. It isn't one thing. It isn't one truth. So having said that, I want to actually read preambles of both of the constitutions so we can see the difference in what we were arguing about. And then what I want to do is I want to look at 3 people, all of them Confederate, so we get a clear understanding from voices that actually lived at the time. So not a historian, not somebody looking at it over time or looking at it after the Civil War ended. No, people living through it. We're going to listen to the South and what some pretty important people said about it, but only 3, because I find their conversation most telling. Okay, and I'm going to read from something I wrote, and it concerns this particular conversation. Chapter 22 I titled Widowmaker. I want to read the preamble of the Constitution of the United States that we are living in right now. The bargain we made that we are living with each other now. This is what was written in the beginning of our Constitution to lay out what it was we were intending to set up. And it goes like this. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution of the United States of America. Okay, and then the younger Constitution, the Confederate Constitution. This is what the South said they were setting up as the preamble of their country that they wanted to establish. We, the people of the Confederate States, each state acting in its sovereign and independent character in order to form a more permanent government, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, invoking the favor and guidance of Almighty God, do ordain and establish this Constitution of the Confederate States of America. I want to read what I wrote about this. Let's count the words. There's 52 words in the older, the original Constitution, and 60 in the younger, Confederate Constitution. 38 words are the same. So that's like 73% for the older and 63% for the younger. And I guess you can say that when the South wrote it, they had a lot more to say, like 7 years more to say. Let's look at the language. The older, our Constitution, is more poetic. It's bigger. It's broader. It has vision. The younger is very specific, very orderly and direct. It seeks ordered structure. Let's look at the words that are important, the ones that are capitalized. In the older, justice, tranquility, welfare, blessings, liberty, posterity. Posterity, in case you don't know, is people who come after you, your posterity. And in the other, well, tranquility and justice are not capitalized. And the entire phrase concerning people's welfare is out, as well as the common defense. Replacing these words concerning people are constructs concerning states. So basically, states are sovereign. They say it in there. People are not sovereign, okay? States are sovereign, and if you look at what was happening at the time, they are saying individual states will be responsible for the people's welfare and defense as they see fit, based on the individual character of that state. So no overriding federal vision. In our Constitution, states still do have rights, but the point of it is if I cross a state line, my inalienable rights don't go away. They go with me. That's our federal government. Liberty, life, happiness, crossing states. That's not their vision. You cross a state, you're in an entirely different country. And then finally, we see the Confederacy invoking Almighty God, while the original Constitution leaves it out. In our Constitution, we the people established it. We didn't need to invoke God. And we know in the development of the Constitution, we didn't want that because we have firsthand accounts of them actually having a conversation about that.
From Madison, here he is proposing an edit to the First Amendment, Article 1. And he says, fourthly, that in Article 1st, Section 9, between clauses 3 and 4, be inserted these clauses, to wit, the civil rights of none shall be abridged on account of religious belief or worship, nor shall any national religion be established, nor shall the full and equal rights of conscience be in any manner or on any pretext infringed.
And if I may, I want to tell you an episode in my own life when I went to Williamsburg. If you wander around Williamsburg, what you'll find is people acting as people from that time, walking through a living history of a written history of right before we declared independence from the Kingdom of Great Britain. And as we were sitting there having our lunch, a gentleman walks in, and his name was Reverend Waddle. He was a real person back in the day. And he was complaining about the fact he couldn't have a church. He was a Presbyterian pastor because there was only one church. It was the Church of England. The King of England was the head of that church because you didn't have freedom of religion. And it wasn't just a point of Christianity. It was the state religion. It was the church. And what Reverend Waddle said is he was only allowed to have a meeting house. So the control of words, the freedom to call a thing the thing you think it is, was not then. You couldn't do that. He couldn't say it was a church. They allowed him to have a meeting house. And as he walked out, he said, we want divinity in government, not religion. However, when the South wrote their Constitution, they made sure to put it in because they thought it was an oversight, and it was not. Divinity in government, not religion. And so now what I want to do is I want to read 3 people from the Confederate state, their commentary on what their Declaration of Independence from the bargain we made in 1776, what it was about. First, we have this idea, it's always there, it's about states' rights. And we can see where people get that because it's actually in the preamble of their Constitution. That's not what it was about.
It was about this question. What exactly did the Confederate framers of that Constitution mean by character in the phrase, each state acting in its own sovereign and independent character?
We know what it was about, don't we? And we know it from 3 different people. The first is Alexander Stephens, who was the vice president of the Confederacy. And he wrote something called the Cornerstone Speech. And in case you don't know what cornerstones are, if you have a house and it's a square, you have 4 cornerstones. Those are the structures that set the foundation of the house. Nothing can be built without the cornerstones. So this was his statement in the Cornerstone speech. He said, "Our new government is founded upon exactly the opposite idea. Its foundations are laid, its cornerstone rests upon the great truth that the Negro is not equal to the white man, that slavery, subordination to the superior race, is his natural and normal condition. This, our new government, is the first in the history of the world based upon this great physical, philosophical, and moral truth." It was a cultural issue we were having. It can be all the other things too, but it was. And to just point out how that is, let me read to you from a woman named Mary Chestnut. Mary Chestnut was a woman married to a very wealthy plantation owner. She was involved in the highest circles of the Confederate Society. She started a diary in 1860. And she wrote something, and I'm going to say, because I found it, she wrote it on March 18th, 1860. And then the war ended, and much of the wealth and societal structure that she had the privilege of being part of dissolved beneath her. She was struggling in 1880, so that's 20 years after the start of the war. And so what she did was she wrote her diary for publication. But she rewrote it. I'm going to show you a little picture of the dates, and what you'll see is March 18th, 1860 is gone. But you can't edit out of history. You can no more get rid of Thomas Jefferson as one of the founding fathers of this country as you can get rid of Frederick Douglass, living in the time of the Confederacy and the Civil War. You cannot get rid of James Madison any more than you can get rid of Robert E. Lee at the time of Confederacy. You can't get rid of it. You can add to history, but you cannot edit out what's been written. And as history goes on, we have to add to history because we become more knowledgeable, right? Because what she had written was her own commentary of the society that she was living in at that time. And it is March 18th, 1860. I believe that's her entry. And here it is.
God forgive us, but ours is a monstrous system and wrong and iniquity. Perhaps the rest of the world is as bad. This only I see. Like the patriarchs of old, our men live all in one house with their wives and their concubines, and the mulattoes one see in every family exactly resemble the white children, and every lady tells you who is the father of all the mulatto children in everybody's household, but those in her own she seems to think drop from the clouds, or pretend so to think.
We know what it was about, don't we? And then finally to get to bargain 3, because these 2 conversations and then this third make up the foundation of what an author wrote in 1949 about bargain 3. And this one was by a Confederate soldier named Sam Watkins. He wrote Company H. And in there, he said, "Rich man's war, poor man's fight."
A law was passed by the Confederate State Congress about this time, allowing every person who owned 20 Negroes to go home. Negro property suddenly became very valuable, and there was a howl of rich man's war, poor man's fight. The glory of war, the glory of the South, the glory of our volunteers had no charms for the conscript.
Rich man's war, poor man's fight. And so when we think of bargain 1, the bull elephants, the kings, the princes, the people with all the power, send out the masses to kill each other. Rich man's war, poor man's fight. And it's the bargain between the rich man and the poor man that is actually bargain 3. So I'm going to talk about that in the next video. And so I'm just going to leave it here, and I'm going to remind you that if you live in the United States, this is the home of the brave. Be brave. Be brave.